My name is Shannon. I'm a transitional kindergarten teacher. I have to be honest with you, I have a lot of public speaking experience, and I've never been more nervous than I am for this one, because I only returned to teach transitional kindergarten last year. Prior to that, for 9 years, I was a part of the faculty at the School of Education at UC Davis. So I traded in 24-year-olds for 24 4-year-olds. And I haven't spoken to groups of adults in 2 years, with the exception of the wonderful parents that I get to work with. So I'm hoping the riding a bike thing is true and that it will come back to me, but I do feel some love in the room and I appreciate that support. So we'll go ahead and get started. This is derived from a parent workshop that I developed. So these are not all necessarily instructional strategies or games I use all the time in my classroom, but I do use many of them. But it was something I developed for our parents. This is our agenda for this session. So I've just given the introduction, gotten a little bit of information about who's in the room. I want to point out that I have my handouts and resources on a Google site for you. So you can just go there and download. So if you're like me and you are reluctant to write on handouts that they give you at the workshop, feel free to scribble on these when I ask you to get them out, because you'll have clean copies there. Because this is what it looks like when I do it for parents. And this way, if you want to do something similar, you have a black and white clean copy master. So handouts and resources are located there. My inspiration for this, as I mentioned, started with some of our LCAP funding, the Local Control and Accountability Program, that my administrator said, I want to do something to engage parents. And parents are really hungry for information. And we share with them the importance of them being involved, but they always want to know how. So she gave us some money to dabble with and develop some workshops. And I'm very fortunate that my administrator, who sadly is moving to another site in the fall, is one of those that she goes with the goers. So it wasn't required. Nobody was forced or mandated to develop a parent workshop. So there were a handful of us that stepped forward and worked to develop these. I wanted to build number sense. I wanted to promote active engagement between parent and child, or grown-up and child. And I wanted to avoid rote activities. This inspiration came actually from hearing some of my colleagues in the upper grades, and when we were giving our materials lists, our requested materials, because we got to build little kits for families to take home, I overheard some of my colleagues talking about flashcards. And it made me think, gosh, they must really have a need for kids to be developing automaticity. Why else would they ask for those? But I really wanted it to be something different than flashing cards for your kids, because I thought if parents could see how easy it is to have these interactions and how much fun it is, and how the kids will start putting down these screens or walking away from the other screens, if the parents have the time and opportunity, hopefully then we will get some of that quality time back for the families. For our online audience, welcome. So you all know in the room that we do have people joining us, unless they're in their swimming pools this afternoon on a nice warm day. We will be doing some hands-on activities, but those groups will be reporting out, so that way we can be more inclusive of our colleagues who are joining us from afar. Yes, and that was another focal point for me in developing these workshops, is that I wanted to have a lot of activities that involved subitizing. So being able to, first of all, for number sense, having a good sense of numbers and their relationships to each other. And we really have to explore numbers and visualize them in different contexts. So that was a driving force behind the development of this content. And then, of course, the subitizing piece. I really wanted to work on that. Those of you who are familiar with this work by Clements in '99, comes from a very accessible, wonderful article that I did not have permissions to directly link on my Google site, but I gave you a link that will directly link you to this article on subitizing. And in the article, it explains the differences between the two types of subitizing skills. The perceptual, just recognizing a number, just knowing it instantly, or seeing it conceptually when there are patterns. Are the websites on It's on the, I'll go back to the screen at the beginning that has the website for you. Yes, the Google site, you bet. So somebody remind me at the end of the session to put that back up for you. So the 2 types of subitizing. I also wanted to focus on helping develop fluency because of that concern I had that my upper grade colleagues felt the need to recommend and teach and train parents how to use flashcards with their kids. I wanted to start developing this fluency early. So we're going to play a game, and I did put the cards out. You'll leave yours on the table for just a moment, but the playing cards, the cards that come from a deck, and when I say 1, 2, 3, salute, your job is to put your card up on your forehead without seeing it. Now, I believe, see, I can't look at my card now, but I do believe that I did bring the deck that has the numbers marked out. Yeah. Sometimes I cut them or mark them out because with my little 4-year-olds, they see the extra little symbol up there. And if they're just counting it, then an 8 becomes a 10 because they count the hearts in the corners. So I cut them out or I mask them in the beginning. And then later, and sometimes the 6 and the 9, until they really know those numbers, they're guessing at them or they're getting them mixed up. So we just remove those challenges, okay? And then I'll give you some clues as to what your numbers are. So are you ready? 1, 2, 3, salute. All right, so I'm going to start, and then you are going to turn to a partner. Can we pass those extra cards down to our friends at the end of the table? I think everybody's got one. Okay. If I add 1 to your card, you would have 5. What do you think your number is? 4. Very good. Okay. The sum of your 2 cards is 7. Now, what do they have to do? You have to look at each other and figure out the sum, the total. What do you think her card is? What do you think your card is? Beg your pardon. 2. And how do you know that? Okay. All right. So you see how this works? Okay, now I want you to turn to someone and give them clues that would be age level appropriate. And for the online audience, I don't know what number I have on my forehead. So maybe you could type in a clue for me. Did you figure yours out? You did? Oh, I love the use of the glasses. Yes, this reminds me of a commercial game called Headbands. If you figured out your number, hold your card straight up. All right, very good. Would you please put the cards down? Did we have any clues come in from our online audience if we still have an audience joining us this late in the day? Were there any responses? I don't see anybody looking at that right now. Okay, so I was hopefully involving our online guests to be able to give me clues about my card. So maybe we'll have somebody that does come in to monitor that online activity. Who would like to share the clue that they gave or that you received that was helpful in you figuring out your card?
Nashaya had 3 and Tiffany had 8, and so I said, if you subtract Nashaya's card from yours, you'll have 5.
And you got it. Okay. Anyone else?
I was told that there are as many as, no, I forgot. Days of the week.
Oh, excellent. That's a nice clue, yes. See, it doesn't have to be specifically tied to the math part.
She told me that in this room that we were in, the first room, our original table had so many chairs, but they added 2 more chairs to it. But what was the original amount of people that were going to sit there?
So connecting to what you know this learner already knew, connecting to their known. That's really important. When you have relationships, I can say it's the number of children you have in your family. That's real to them because I have kiddos who this adding or subtracting or creating a sum or finding the difference, that's not accessible to them yet. They're not there at that point yet, but they can figure out these other things if I'm pulling in information that is familiar to them. It's the number of toes you have on one foot. So this could be endless. This game can go on and on and on. And the fun thing is when children start to learn how to play it, it's a choice they make during choice time to play with one another. Yes, okay. Let's see, let's go on. I move around a lot and I set things down and my kids always have to find them for me. So that is the game Salute. Now you'll notice in the handout, when you see the handout, but even up here, I do have variations. So these, as I told the parents in my workshops both years that I presented it, these 12 games, 4 for cards, 4 for dice, 4 for dominoes, they start left to right just like we read, and the ones on the left are easier and they get more complex as you move across to the right. But within any one of those activities or games, there are variations. So sometimes it's adding another card to the mix, adding more dice, taking away dice, making it subtract instead of add. Try to get the lower number versus the highest number. So you'll see those variations in there. Any questions on Salute? How many of you think you'll go play it with, teach some kids how to play that game? Good. Okay, this one is called Number Staircase. Could you get a piece of scratch paper and just jot this image? It starts with 1, and how many do I have at the bottom? Show me on your fingers how many you're going to draw at the bottom. Excellent. Okay, if you could jot something. If you want to just jot underlines instead of the whole square, that's fine as well. You need 1 at the top, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 lines at the bottom. Okay, this is called Number Staircase. I'm going to hold up a card. We're going to start top down. I'm going to hold up a card, and you'll write that number in the very top box. And maybe up in the corner of your piece of paper, give yourself a point because you correctly put the number 3 at the top of your number staircase. Now it's going to get a little more challenging, and you'll have to decide for yourself whether or not you like the games to assign points and have winners and, those who didn't win. But in families, that's pretty common. So I'm not promoting it in the classroom. This was for a family situation. All right, the next row. How many numbers do we need to fill in the blanks in the next row? I'm seeing fingers like this. That means 2. All right, so I need to pull 2 cards. I will pull them one at a time. You decide where you're going to put the number before, the first number before I show you the second number. Ready? So you have to decide. Are you going to put it in the left box or the right box? It's a number 6. Oh, I'm glad I picked that one because that one. All right, did everybody put the 6 in one of their spaces? Let's see if you picked the right space. Ooh, this one. A 9, put it in the other space. The space that remains. No, you could have put the 6 in either one of the 2 spaces. Okay, we put a 3 up there. Then I drew a 6. So I could have put the 6 here, or I could have put the 6 there. But we're still only working with those. Now, in the space that remains, let's say I put the 6 here. What number would I put there? 9. The 9 would go there. What's the biggest number I could have made on that row of the number staircase? No, if I had, think place value. 96. Okay, so you see how this is going? And you see how now it could be a lot. So we're doing this as a group around a small table, and we're comparing and contrasting and discussing the largest number, the smallest number. We'll do just one more row. So we need 3 digits. So what place value are we moving up to? Hundreds, okay. With the little guys, I'm not even talking about place number, place value at all. I can layer that vocabulary on later. I'm building the concept now. And then later, when we're talking about tens and ones, they say things like, oh, yeah, it's like the steps. Oh, yeah, I remember that game. For very young children, I probably wouldn't go past the 3. I would make a different configuration for the staircase. Are we all together now? Okay. Oh, that was a gimme. That one's easy. Where are we going to put this one, ladies and gentlemen? Yeah, we'll put it in the ones place. It's not going to do a lot of good for us elsewhere. Oh. I think we're going to have to do another row because this one. So we've got, this is a 10. And, oh. So what happened with that 10? Now, if I were playing this, when I play it with really young kids, I take the 10s out of the deck. For what purpose? Yeah. Right, I need a single digit for each place value. But if you put it in the hundreds, what did you get? You got a big bonus. Okay, so see, you've got the kiddos then who know that, oh, I just stick another number right over there to put it in. And even if you don't tell them this ahead of time, I'm not one of those teachers that is really good at lockstepping instructions for kids because I need to see what they do with it first because that tells me what their known is and where they're at. So we'll see the kids who problem solve that and figure that out. That tells you a lot about their mathematical insights. And then, of course, scaffold and support for the children who don't. All right, I think in the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and move on. So we got a number of, what was that, 1,011? Okay, all right, very good. So that is number staircase. More or less. Oh, now we're getting to the point in the session that I switched up about 15, 20 minutes before you all came. So bear with me. But I have around the room on the tables, there are these teal-colored brochures, I call them, but they're just your handout, folded and cut. And when you open them up, it's dice and then dominoes. You have either dice or dominoes, depending on what game is marked on yours. And if you could just turn tables or maybe move a spot to get near one of these teal handouts so that you can work as a group. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes. Okay, not everybody has one. That's why we have to cluster around them. So we're forming groups. And if you're a single person, maybe you want to move to where there are more people or turn around. So some friends will have to turn around and join another group or scooch together. All right, so your game is marked. You have the tools and the instructions. So work together as a group to play your game for 5 minutes.
So this is for the home audience. We played a game called More or Less, and we each had a die. We rolled it 20 times and totaled up the numbers. And the first time you play it, my partner got a 70 and I got 61, so she wins the first time. This would be really challenging for young children. But I think that the other way it's written is if you have the higher number, you get 1 point. So you could do it for children who are less skilled at math. You could do it that way as well. We were doing it with addition. And I was trying to do it in my head, which was just trying to keep track of 20 rolls, 2 dice, and the head count. Wow.
And honestly, the 20 rolls, that's kind of arbitrary. Just because, again, if I could go back to the beginning, these games and activities were put together for parents to do with their children. They're not managing a class of 24 children and one person running around to scaffold and support all this. I would never turn my kids loose with all these materials when there's only one adult and not there to scaffold and support for them. That being said, I do turn my kids loose with dice frequently, all at the same time. But we use these because they don't have to take them out to see and count the pips on the dice. So this one is just the little Glad. I picked them up at Target Dollar Store. There's one on my way home. I drive by it every single day, and I stop 3 out of 5 days a week at the dollar store to pick up things. So some people call these casinos. I'm not sure what families' opinions are of gambling. So this one happens to have 3, but usually it's 2, and sometimes it's 1. So this is all a building process. I don't start with 5 dice for children who are just learning to recognize the pips, to subitize those numbers. So it takes practice in building. But I hope what you're seeing is this range that allows me to differentiate. I know which children in my classroom can handle the 3 dice, and they're getting 3 dice in their cups when they go to the math tubs, which is my next session, so I'll save that for later. Okay. The big dice? I've got bigger ones that I'll be using later this afternoon. They love those. They can roll them across the floor. So one of these, thank you. For me to train my little guys, that's not the word, you train monkeys, to help them develop self-regulatory skills when we use the manipulatives in fun ways, we talk about a gentle rain, not a thunderstorm, and we practice that a lot. Okay, I want to hear a thunderstorm, and they go crazy. Okay, now gentle rain, because for some teachers, me included on certain days, that could frazzle me. And I'd never want to use dice again. So, usually it's only one of my math tubs, one of my workshop stations that's using dice. But if I do have something that I want everyone to practice, we're doing it in a contained way. All right, so that was, I was feeling so confident about the tech. Oh, it just got tired. Good. Okay, who did Going to Boston? Anybody? Oh, we didn't get a group that had Going to Boston. Okay, well, this one I can explain to you. This is a lot of fun. So Going to Boston, if you have 3 dice, so basically, I'm going to roll my 3 dice. I have a 2, a 4, and a 5. If I want to keep the largest one, which one do I keep? Show me on your hands the number. Okay, so then I keep the 5, roll it again. Oh, I have 2 4s. You might have to come up with a rule. What would your rule be? And that's why I tell the kids, oh, what do you think? Oh, do it again. Pick one. Your turn's over. You lost a turn. Whatever you want it to be. I have a 5 and a 1. So another 5. And then, so the notion of this, then I have a 3. So I have a 5, and a 3. Now, later in the year, my kids are counting those. My kids know with automaticity what a 5 looks like and that 2 of them makes 10. So they're starting from there. And now they just have to go up 1 to 11. All right, so that's Going to Boston. Again, obviously, a variation on that could be more dice, more tries, or save the lowest number, the smallest number. So these, with just a few tools, guess where I got them? Yes, bingo. A lot of things can be done with these very simple tools. That they're not what?
Well, sometimes you buy them and then they have, there's not a 6, it's like a 5 or something, you know.
Oh, yes. And there are some games, frankly, that I have put little stickies on the 5. You'll see anybody who stays for math tubs later, because when we're working with 2 10 frames and I want, or a number path that has 20 on it, I can't get to 20 evenly with dice. Right? Ah, I made you think. Okay. You already thinking. That's obvious. Okay, add fast war. This was with Dominoes. Who wants to describe what they did with add fast? All right, I'll do it. With the dominoes. So whatever number of players you have, divide up the dominoes. Either divide them up, shuffle them, and deal them, or leave them in a cup. That's typically what I do in the classroom when I have a small group using dominoes is they just leave it in my box in the middle of the table and they just draw from there, because there isn't really any reason that my kiddos need to have multiple dominoes in their possession at a given moment. So basically, they're shuffling the dominoes. I'm trying to look to see where there are some. And you pull one up, and let's say you have 2 pips and 4 pips. What's the total? 6. Now, of course, in the beginning of the year, what are my little guys doing? Good, because we heard the importance of counting in practice, right? They're not necessarily collections, but this is giving them an authentic opportunity for counting that's meaningful to them. So they're doing that, add fast. And then pretty soon, you'll see the kiddos who, what did I say, 4 and 2? They recognize the 4. They're not counting 4s anymore. By December, my kids aren't counting these numbers anymore. They know 1 to 6 and what the pips look like. So now they're just counting, what's the word? On. They subitize, they recognize one side, and then they're just counting on. And then, of course, there are kids who very early are able to add some of the simple numbers, the doubles facts for sure. Okay, so variation, instead of keeping track of points for the sum, they take the dominoes and just set them aside. So that's their scorekeeping device. Does that make sense? All right, so it's kind of like the card game War, but just using dice. Could you do that with, or that's with dominoes. Could you do it with dice? Could you do it with cards? That's another key thing about all of these activities. Most of them are kind of interchangeable so that they get multiple exposures and they recognize the numbers quickly and build that fluency. All right, how about make it big? Who had the make it big? This one also relates to place value. Okay.
So we started off with the dominoes and we divided them equally, face down. Then we turned 1 domino each. We weren't sure of the place value, but we started doing, so if there was a 5 and a 4, we did that as a 54. So I got a 54 and she got a 31, for example. I would get the point because I have the biggest number. But then we discussed about the younger students, first grade, maybe kinder, doing just the ones place. So it will be 9 and 4 instead of the 54 and the 31. And there's different.
You have to add facts. That's when you're adding it together. So key to this, and I'm glad we discussed these in that order. The key to this is I have to really be conscious about when I do the activities that are adding and subtracting, and how much time needs to elapse between doing place value when I'm using something like a domino. Because they'll want to add them up, and then they get some experience with place value, and if it's too quickly after that experience, then they're confusing those, and I don't want to create that confusion. Early on, my goal is, can you show me which one's bigger? Which one's bigger? Because I'd have to know that a 5 is bigger than a 3, and they know that visually. We're teaching that conceptually with this kind of activity. Okay, so turn the domino. Which one would be bigger than smaller? That's also helpful in getting the children to look for the largest number to count on. And we heard that from one of our speakers this morning. I think it was Sue Dolphin, who said if she gave us a lot of money, who's going to start counting the pennies first? Well, it's similar here. If we can get kids to identify visually, just based on visual inspection, which numbers are larger, start there and then count or add on. Variation with this one, make the smaller number. So instead of 54, 45. Instead of 31, 13. In the beginning, yes. Yes, on 1 domino, yes. Then that is incorporating the addition piece. So I have to be really clear on my objective, the why. Why am I doing this? So if I just want them to start recognizing that on a domino that has 5 and 4 pips, which one is the larger number? Point to the larger number. Or they can draw it and circle the one that has more. And I'm probably also going to pre-select dominoes. I'm not going to put the whole set out there. So start with 3s and 1s and 6 and 4, so it's a little more obvious. So again, just like that staircase, these are building. So these activities could take you really through the better part of the year. But just keep in mind that this really was derived from a workshop for parents where they're working in a small, intimate setting with very close proximity to an adult who is scaffolding. So these things like 54, does my 5-year-old really need to know 54? No, but isn't it a nice foundational skill to be able to flip a domino and show me which side is bigger? And then the parent says, oh, it's 54. Or we talked about the number 5 and 5, 55, or a 6 and a 5. Oh, look, Maricel, look at the sign, the speed limit. What number is that? There's a 6 in front of a 5. Remember when we played that? So we're making those connections. What's that? But Mommy, you're using the next place value over. Your speedometer says a much bigger number. I know that was pretty quick. I hope that that was helpful to the at-home audience to be able to hear what people were doing in the room. I want to make some classroom connections and then wrap it up with sort of a reflection. I know that was quick, but it'll give you a chance to look over the handout that you have. In my classroom, here are my kiddos. This is pretty close to the beginning of the year. A little ways in because I know that because I don't have the masked out or the cut out corners. So they had been exposed. They're only using numbers 1 through 10. They're working cooperatively as a group to put them in 1 to 10 order. So that very soon after that, individuals are able to put them in 1 to 10 order. But this way, they worked cooperatively, and I don't have the permissions like the researchers would for my quote subjects, so I had to mask them somehow. So no, my kids didn't play with sunglasses on. Those are actually clip art sunglasses that I put on them. But how do they feel after this? This was about October. 4-year-olds, October. Not all of them had turned 5 yet, especially this one who it's not diagnosed yet, but I am confident he has SBS, silly boy syndrome. And I don't know the cure, so if any of you know what the cure is for silly, so he's our youngest in the class. And here, so I have my youngest and currently still working on solidifying and consolidating some of these things, but he's come so far with his number sense. And then this one who's off the charts. I keep a 100 chart, and every time I read a new read aloud, somebody gets to go color in a dot, and then we're counting by 10s and 1s. And long about, I don't know, in the 40s, I know it was when we were in the 40s, he looked at the daily sign where I write how many days in school, because we also keep track of how many days we're in school by putting one piece of a 100-piece puzzle on the puzzle, because it also has the configuration that's a 10 by 10. And in the 40s somewhere, he just, Mrs. Cannon, what, Dylan? We have read more books than the number of days we've been in school. And I had never made that connection for the kids intentionally. So talk about teaching to the margins. Those are my margins right now. But look at my margin kids having a great game of add fast, more or less. Yep. Let's see. Later in the, these are my subitize, I call them my subitizing cards. They're just picture cards with different number representations. For the parents who attended our workshop, this is what they went home with. I had made, so they got 2 decks of cards, because maybe you want to have the blue ones, I want to have the red ones, and we're able to play war or add fast. They got a set of the dominoes, and I think I put 5 dice in there. There's only 3 in this box, but I probably borrowed from them. But here was something that now this kind of might sound a little contradictory as far as what I said about flashcards earlier. I'm not against them. It kind of hurt my heart that if we're going to encourage our families to spend quality time together, maybe there's something a little different we could do. Can I ask you to hold this for me, please? Thank you. So these are tally marks. You know what this is a representation of? A wreck and wreck. A wreck and wreck. A wreck and wreck. Oh, and it's so fun with the kids who aren't saying their R's, articulating their R's yet. A whack a whack. Mrs. Ken, a whack a whack. Or if you don't want to say wreck and wreck, you can say math rack. So this is to help anchor 5s and 10s. And the rule is white on the right. You always hold the wreck and wreck with the white on the right. Now, because my kiddos can tell you instantly what that number is. Because they know 5 white, 5 red. Well, if I have 2 white, that means I had 5 plus 2 is 7. And they love these. And I just got these, one of the few things I didn't buy at the dollar store. Had to go to Hobby Lobby. Yeah, twist my arm, I had to go to Hobby Lobby. So these are just wooden dowels. I had seen them made with the, what's the political, you're not supposed to say pipe cleaner because we're not supposed to say pipe because that's smoking and we don't want to talk about that. But whatever, the chenille wires. Okay. So I've seen them with that, but they don't slide as easily as these do. I made these. Actually, the kids made them. So these are the similar to skewers. However, the reason I didn't use skewers is because these are blunt on the end, not pointed sharp like a skewer. Just like electrician's tape, wound around a few times. And they're just pony beads. Now, so what you want to do is you want to make sure that you test them out. I think they sell these in kits now, though. But you want to, I'm just so DIY, I never think to go buy it. I just make more work for myself. So anyway, just make sure, and they let me, the day that I was looking at this in the store, they let me open up the beads and the little dowel. This is back in kind of the woodworking section. There you go. I just don't want to be on camera. You can pass it around. All right. So the point of me telling you that is because these cards are wreck and wreck cards. Okay, so that's another representation. So we had tallies. We had the wreck and wreck because the anchors of 5 and 10 are so valuable. So these cards, and I will post these on my Google site. Like, see, now that you know, if you see, how many red? 5. And you don't even have to count them anymore because I know conceptually that on a wreck and wreck, if I start seeing white beads, that means I have I already have 5. I'm just counting on. So the point is that this little set of cards has pips, and and there's numbers 1 through 10 for all of these. So I'm just pulling up individuals. Wreck and wrecks, pips, tallies, and 10 frames. So that's a very frequent activity in my classroom. I have others, the numbers with your fingers, just stars that they're kind of in arrays, but not quite, so they actually have to count those, or they're kind of looking at how they can group them together. But it's a matching game. So in the beginning, I'm only pulling out, let's say, the pips and the 10 frames. Okay, show me the 4, show me the 4, show me the 1, show me the 1, and they're lining them up. But at the end of the year, my children in my classroom in a pocket chart were doing all of those from 1 to 10, matching them up. Okay, we are tight on time, so I want to get to our reflective piece. Here, just to show you what it evolves to. So these are the matching of the cards. I have some other types that I use in the classroom that are laminated, a little bit bigger. Here, kiddos writing equations from their Dominoes. And my kids love to write equations. They're crazy about it because they never did a single worksheet using equations all year long. So here they're drawing the pips, but then they have to write the number of the total. Here are two kiddos writing equations using the addition machine. Oh, it's a very fancy machine. I wrapped construction paper around 2 toilet paper rolls, and I put magnets on them. And so they look at their domino. She had the left side. Natalie had the right side. She picks up whatever number is on her side, puts it in the yellow tube, writes her number down on the left-hand side of the equation. And then Natalie looks on her side of the domino, picks up that many little cubes, slides them in, and then they see in the clear plastic cup where these drop into that this 3 plus this 4 equals this 7. Yeah. Right, I think that's it. So we have about 5 minutes left, not quite. Please turn and talk with someone at your table or some others. Today, in this very rapid fire session, what did you see in terms of concepts and skills in these games that support later mathematical learning? What are some of the foundations you saw? What are your thoughts? What do you see happening in some of these games that might support future mathematical learning? Any potential for multiplication? We're not talking about multiplication at this level, but when they see that 3 of us rolled a 3, they're getting a sense of what that is. Any other skills that are laying that foundation? And my kids love math because it's so engaging and hands-on. So I'll share a couple last things, fun things that we did. And I just can't help myself sometimes. I was in the dollar store again Wednesday, and school got out last Thursday, and I'm still going to the dollar store. But because I was having a send-off for one of my colleagues, and I needed the little stemless plastic beverage cups for adults, and I laid them on the belt, when she's checking me out, and I couldn't help myself. I had to buy 10, so I had 2 rows of 5, right? Looks like a 10 frame. And she looked at him, and she picked one up. She said, 10, right? And I said, you just subitized. And she looked at me like, I did what? I'm still, it's only a week since school let out, and my room's not packed yet, so I'm still in teacher mode. All right, we have our 6th grade big buddies. And my kinder colleagues, do an egg hunt. And I just am not a big fan of putting lots of little sugar in eggs and giving them to young children, because I think their parents are probably going to do that on their own. So what we did was we stuffed our 200 plus eggs with these visual representations of numbers, like a 10 frame, like a tally, like the pips. And then they had a 100 chart. I know I have one. They had a 100 chart. Now, by this time in the year, I'm not giving them the 100 chart that has all the numbers. I'm only giving them the 100 chart that has the anchors of 1, 5, and 10, because they, by late March, were able to do this. So they were marking off on their 100 chart. So I got a 6, and then I got a 4, and then but they had their big buddy to make sure they didn't skip lines and to encourage them, okay, let's go back and count. So 10, 11, 12, 13. Well, it's going to take a long time to fill up a 100 chart. And the rule was you go get 10 eggs. So in some eggs, I had to make sure there were much bigger numbers. Oh, and the paper is here that I had those on. And in those, it would be, I can't find it, 10 plus 2. They got to mark off how many squares on their 100 chart? 12. 10 plus 3. So I did all the teens. That reinforced that skill in an authentic way where there's an older, more capable partner to help them with what they may have had challenges with. I also had, because we practiced a lot on counting to 100s back and forward and back, so I just had the sequence of the numbers, 10, 20, blank. So if you knew what the number was that fit in the blank, you marked off that many squares. All right. I'm not sure. It is like riding a bike. I'm still really rusty, but I thank you for hanging in there with me. If there are any materials that we were using, if you could pass them to the insides here. And there is the website. And over here is my email address if you have any questions. I will post my Subitizing cards. And the best way, so you don't have to cut these out, is by Avery Business Cards. By the Avery Business Cards, that's what I have formatted them for, so I'm not using scissors to cut them out. They're just pulling apart. They're perforated. I thank you for spending your time this afternoon, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.